Oliver, the Great Western Engine, has settled in nicely to his new life on the island of Sodor. After being saved from scrap by Douglas, Oliver, alongside his best friend and trusty brakeman Toad, was given another chance at life on the Northwestern Railway. Although there were a few bumps in the road at the beginning, notably with troublesome trucks, Oliver learned his lesson and has become a wiser, more humble, and well-rounded engine. Oliver spends most of his time working on the Little Western branch with Duck, and enjoys himself mostly. More often than not, Oliver is in good spirits and popular with the other engines. Recently, Oliver had been tasked with shunting in the yard. He didn't mind this work and enjoyed speaking with all the other engines that passed through. However, he longed to stretch his wheels and explore the line beyond. One day, Toad noticed Oliver was looking down, so he decided to find out why.
Excuse me, Mr. Oliver, but it seems to me that you have been unhappy as of late, if you forgive me for mentioning it.
You are quite right, Toad. All I do is shunt these trucks onto the turntable. I long for a nice run. It's what an engine really needs.
Quite agreed, Mr. Oliver. May I suggest that you speak to Sir Topham Hatt about it?
Oliver sighed. He wanted to ask Sir Topham Hatt for a change of scenery, but not wanting to complain, Oliver said nothing. Instead, he just grew unhappier and became rough with the trucks.
You're no good, Oliver. You're dangerous and a real piece of scrap. We want Percy.
Percy's far too busy to be bothered with the likes of you, Oliver shouted, and he bumped the trucks hard, straight into the turntable well. You stupid engine, shouted a workman. It'll take a long time to repair this turntable, which will cause confusion and delay. Sir Topham Hatt is going to hear about this. Oliver didn't reply. Instead, he just stared down at his buffers in shame, fearing the worst. Now Sir Topham Hatt's surely going to punish me. I'm never going to get out of this yard now. That night, as Oliver feared, Sir Topham Hatt came to see him. He did not look happy as he stepped out of his car and began walking towards him. He stopped and stood in front of the Great Western Engine, looking up at him in visible disappointment. Oliver, your accident has caused significant delays. I thought you could control troublesome trucks, but maybe I was wrong. Sir Topham Hatt sighed and shook his head. I don't know what's gotten into you, Oliver. You're usually so reliable and well-behaved. Maybe you just need a change of scenery. Thomas has been overworked recently and needs a break from some duties, so you can work the mail train and help Percy for a while. Maybe the night air and a good run will clear your smoke box. Yes, please, sir. I will. I'm sorry, sir, said Oliver sadly. With that, Sir Topham Hatt turned and walked back to his car. Oliver still looked glum, and his driver noticed. Cheer up, old chap, said his driver. The mail train is a grand run for a fine engine like you. Oliver smiled, but still felt a bit guilty. Oh well, at least I'll finally be out of this silly yard. Anything's better than this. The following night, Oliver began taking the mail, with Toad trailing behind. They went along the coastal run with the mail train in the late hours of the evening. The fresh air and beautiful sights of the seaside and branch line at night couldn't help but brighten Oliver's spirits. This isn't so bad, is it, old boy? Said Oliver's driver. No, this is quite nice, actually, Oliver declared. They made great time and were on schedule at every station. Oliver enjoyed the run enormously and found great joy and peace in exploring the railway at night. However, he couldn't shake the eerie feeling in the back of his boiler that something was off, that he was being watched. The next day, Oliver met Duck at one of the stations and chatted with him about the mail train. How do you like the mail train? Duck asked. Oh, Duck, I love it. It's great. Everything's so nice and peaceful at night. It makes me feel like I'm the only engine in the world. Toad likes it too, I think. But what? Duck questioned. Well, the thing is, I can't help but feel like something's not right. Like, there's something off. What do you mean? I dunno. It's like, there's something different about Sodor at night, and, well, I think there's something watching me. Duck was taken aback and raised an eyebrow. He was puzzled at first, but then, after a moment, he replied. Don't be so ridiculous, Oliver. There's nothing wrong with Sodor at night.
You're probably just anxious. When was the last time you pulled a train at night? When you escaped from scrap?
That's probably it. You're just nervous and might be getting flashbacks to bad memories, that's all. I'm sure it'll pass with time. You just need to get accustomed to it.
I dunno, Duck. Maybe you're right, but still, Duck cut Oliver off. Oliver, there's nothing to worry about, and there is nothing out there watching you. Oliver perked up and smiled, but still felt a bit uneasy. Later that day in the yard, Oliver was given some bad news. Toad is in need of some repairs, so he's going to be taken to the works. He won't be joining us tonight, but he'll be back in a few days, said his driver. Oliver sighed in disappointment.
Oh, alright. Just come back soon, Toad.
Toad gave a warm smile.
Don't worry, Mr. Oliver. I'm sure you'll get on just fine. I'll be back before you know it.
Oliver smiled back, hoping Toad would return sooner rather than later. That night, Oliver went back to taking the mail. As usual, they made good time, until they had to collect some important mail from Harold the helicopter at one of the stations. Oliver waited and waited, but Harold didn't come.
Come on, Harold,
Oliver said impatiently. Time passed and Oliver continued to wait. At last, Harold landed.
Sorry I'm late, Great Western. Had a bit of a problem with one of my arms. Kept letting me down when I was meant to be up. You know how it is.
Yeah, we know that we're going to be late, replied Oliver's driver. Soon, they were on their way again. The cool air and majestic sights of Sodor at night made for another grand run. Oliver still felt a bit on edge, as he still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Everywhere he went, he felt a presence from a distance he couldn't explain nor recognize. Without Toad, Oliver felt more vulnerable than ever. Nonetheless, Oliver tried his best to shrug it off and enjoy the journey. Soon, they arrived at a red signal. Oliver came to a stop and waited for the signal to change. What Oliver didn't realize was that the signalman had dozed off. Oliver whistled several times, but the signal stayed red. He soon grew cross.
Come on, what's the hold-up?
I'm not sure. There must be something wrong with that signal. We'll go slowly and stop by the signal box to see what the problem is, said his driver. But they never reached it. The points at the next junction before the signal box were switched to an old track. They were now going the wrong way, but Oliver and his crew didn't realize this. As they puffed down the old line, Oliver thought he could hear the sound of a steam engine puffing and whistling in the distance, but it soon faded as he went further down the branch line. Oliver tried to keep his bearings, but the water in his boiler grew colder as his surroundings became less and less familiar. Oliver's firemen soon grew concerned. We need to find a water tower soon, but there was no water tower in sight. Instead, an old station and run-down buildings in the distance eventually came into view.
What's that?
Oliver squinted his eyes, trying to see what he was approaching, but neither he nor his driver could see, until it was too late. Disaster lay ahead. At the end of the line stood an old, dilapidated engine shed, with its doors closed.
Driver, look out! Oh no!
Oliver's driver shouted as he tried applying the brakes, but it was too late. Oliver shut his eyes as he sped past the old station and came flying towards the shed, smashing through the doors with ease. He slammed into the back of the shed, nearly plowing through the other side, but managed to stop in time, leaving only a few cracks in the wall in front of him. But the damage was done, and the shed was now just barely able to stand. The structure held, for now. Oliver's crew slowly stood up in his cab, recovering from the collision. The driver hopped out and turned to Oliver.
Are you alright, Ollie?
He shouted in concern. Oliver opened his eyes slowly, trying to survey his surroundings.
Yeah, I'm alright. Just uncomfortable and in a bit of pain, that's all, he replied.
Alright, let me look you over. The driver surveyed the damage while the firemen began walking around, trying to determine where they were.
Well, that's done it. I'm sorry, old boy, but I think we're stuck here for the night. You're lodged in the shed pretty tight, and you're nearly out of water, so we'll have to wait until morning and then search for help. And it looks like the station and buildings around here are deserted, so we won't be finding any help here, replied the fireman.
Oh, bother, Oliver groaned, realizing his driver was right. Oliver's crew decided to sleep in the brake van with the guard, until the sun was up high enough for them to walk back down the line for help. Oliver was soon left alone with his thoughts. The night was eerie, and his surroundings were desolate. Oliver felt uncomfortable, but nonetheless, he closed his eyes and eventually drifted off to sleep. Oliver suddenly woke up. He opened his eyes. Some time had passed, but he wasn't sure how much. It was still dark, and the sun was not yet in sight. Something had woken him up, but he wasn't sure what. Then Oliver realized something. He was no longer trapped in the shed, and was now sitting facing the opposite direction, towards the station and the line beyond that extended into the darkness. He had no mail vans, no brake van, and no crew. The air was still and the night quiet. Everything was silent. Oliver was completely and utterly alone, and felt so more than he ever had in his entire life. The abandoned buildings and the lifeless, desolate landscape of his surroundings were disturbing to Oliver. He tried to put on a brave face and return to his sleep, but Oliver was not alone for long. Before he could close his eyes, the silence was broken. In the distance, Oliver could make out the distinct sound of an engine, a steam engine, puffing hard and making its way down the line. Oliver couldn't tell who it was, thought nothing of it, until he realized that the sound of the puffing was growing closer and closer, and as it grew closer, it picked up speed and became faster and faster. Suddenly, the rails began to vibrate and even shake a little, so much to the point that Oliver felt it, and it was strong. The realization then dawned on Oliver. The oncoming engine was on the same line as him. The sound of the puffing intensified as it grew nearer and nearer. Oliver could feel the presence of a large engine thundering down the line as he stood still in the shed, beginning to tremble. All of his anxieties reemerged, and his boiler ran cold as the pit within him grew. Oliver was horrified, knowing a collision was imminent. He tried to whistle, but was still too short of steam. Oliver felt helpless, powerless to stop what was coming. Within seconds, the sound of the steam engine's puffing climaxed and its speed peaked. As this happened, the dark figure of an engine emerged from the darkness, careening towards Oliver. Oliver stared in disbelief as the engine charged him. Oliver tried to cry out, to warn the engine, to stop it, to say or do something, but found he had lost his voice. He stuttered and twitched as he tried to manage a word, a whisper, but couldn't. He couldn't even scream, no matter how hard he tried. All Oliver could do was watch. The foreboding whistle of the oncoming engine boomed and echoed through the night as it soared towards him. As the engine was on the verge of colliding with Oliver, he clenched his eyes tight, fearing these were his last moments. But nothing happened. No sound of a crash, no sudden, violent movement, no pain. For a moment, there was nothing. An abyss. The void. Then, things changed. Suddenly, the air grew warm, too warm, hot even. Oliver began to feel heat all around him. He then began to hear sounds in the distance, as they faded in and grew louder. The sounds of large, rusty machines hard at work, torches burning, the humming of cranes lifting and loading, the grinding and crushing of old pieces of metal, chains clanking, and the purr of diesel engines all echoed through the air. These were noises he knew all too well. Oliver slowly opened his eyes. He instantly knew where he was. He was in the scrapyard once again, where he long thought he had escaped from. The cutter's torch, that he had become free of, moved on from. But now he was back in that horrible place he was all too familiar with. Except now, there was no one to save him. No! No, 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 please, no! Oliver tried to move, but he couldn't. He had no steam and no crew. He could do nothing. Oliver looked all around in search of someone, anyone to call out to. At first, there was no one, nothing. All that surrounded him were the empty shells of engines long gone, scrapped. He stood on a lonely siding, awaiting his transfer to the smelting shed, where he would be torn to shreds and melted down. However, soon, diesels he'd never encountered before, began to pass by and lurk among the sidings in various lines of the scrapyard. He tried calling out to them. Hey, please, this is a mistake. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a Sodor engine. I need to get out of here. No reply came. All Oliver could hear were the purrs of their engines and menacing chuckles under their breath. No, no, no. Then something dawned on Oliver. Toad? Toad, where are you? Oliver cried out, hoping for a response. After darting his eyes around in search of Toad, he then saw him, only it was no longer Toad.
Toad? Toad, is it you?
Then he stopped, realizing the horrible truth. Where a face once stood at the end of the Great Western Brake Van was nothing, only an empty wooden plank on the verge of falling off of its frames among the scrap heap.
No, 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 please, no!
The sounds and ambience of the smelter's yard grew louder and louder. Oliver began to hear screams of agony and pain all around him, those of fellow engines, the unmistakable sounds of steam engines and other machines being cut up and torn to pieces, torched and melted down. Just as tears began to fall down Oliver's cheeks, he began to hear voices. First, he began to hear the cackle of a familiar voice.
Not so tough now, are you, Ollie?
Oliver's eyes turned to a corner of the scrap heap, where the old, rusty frames of a truck stood. It was Scruffy. The truck he had torn apart. He had tried to teach a lesson, but it went too far, as he unintentionally ripped him to pieces. He was rebuilt, but hasn't spoken to Oliver since. Only now he was back, mocking him.
Look who's being torn apart now, you old piece of scrap. Getting what you deserve at last. The boys and I will be pleased when you're gone. Don't worry, we'll take good care of your friends.
More voices continued to come. Oliver turned his attention back to the tracks beside him, where 3 big engines now stood. Gordon, Henry, and James, who gazed at him.
Pathetic. Just a poor excuse of an engine. Not so amazing or sagacious after all.
Liar, you're a fraud. You're not brave, you're worthless. Nothing. A piece of scrap, an imposter, a coward. You don't deserve to be on our railway.
No, I'm not, please. You're my friends,
Oliver began to sob and shut his eyes, hoping the voices would go away. For a second, the voices subsided. Then he opened his eyes. There stood Donald, Douglas, and Doug. They spoke. They were blunt, but brief.
You don't deserve to be Great Western.
Okay, I don't know why you bothered saving him from the scrap heap, Douglas. Always despised that old hunk of junk.
No, that's not true.
I shouldn't have saved you in the first place. I should have left you to rot in that old siding. You're pathetic.
You didn't deserve to be saved. You deserve to be scrapped.
Oliver blinked as he began to cry, but then all of the voices returned, with all of the engines and rolling stock surrounding him, intensified, all of them speaking at once, mocking, condemning, and insulting him. Then a figure from the shadows emerged, Sir Tom Mad. He stood in front of Oliver, gazing up at him in disappointment.
I guess you weren't really useful after all. Take him away.
Oliver then felt a sudden bump from behind as a diesel coupled up to him and began dragging him away into the smelting shed. Oliver cried out in horror, begging for his life.
No, I am still useful. I'm a good engine. You're my friends. Please, don't leave me here, please.
There was no reply as the doors to the shed slammed shut, cutting Oliver off from the outside world forever. The diesel soon came to a stop, uncoupled, and left Oliver to sit under the monstrous grabber, preparing to pick him up and carry him away into oblivion. He stared up in horror as the grabber descended.
No, someone help me, please, no!
Then, before he could think, Oliver looked back down at the line in front of him. There was the shadowy, dark shape of the engine that nearly collided with him before the madness began. Standing before him, where the engine's face was supposed to be, stood a cold, vacant, intimidating smokebox door. And yet, Oliver could feel the lifeless specter's gaze upon him, staring at him, judging him in his final moments. As the scrap grabber locked onto Oliver, he cried out one final time.
No, please, no! Why are you doing this? No!
But just before Oliver was lifted off the tracks, the specter's shrill whistle blew loud and long, and rang through the air, deafening him, and a sudden burst of light whisked Oliver away, gone in an instant. As Oliver heard the engine's whistle bellow and fade, echoing into nothingness, he joined it, and became one with the abyss.
Oliver, are you alright? What's wrong? Stop, it's alright, boy.
The familiar, distant voice of his driver echoed and faded in. Oliver opened his eyes. Daylight had come. He was back at the shed on the abandoned line where he had last stood the night before. Only now he was standing outside and no longer trapped within the shed.
What happened?
It's okay, Oliver. We went and got help. Harold's going to land here any minute. We managed to find some water to steam you up and get you free of the shed, but then you just started screaming all of a sudden. Are you okay? Did you have a bad dream?
I don't know. I was here 1 second last night, and then all of a sudden I was at the scrap yard, and
Oh, it's alright, old boy. You're safe. You're on Sodor. No one's going to scrap you here. They then looked up to see Harold hovering.
See? We've been found.
Harold then landed nearby. Sir Topham Hatt stepped out and approached them as Oliver tried to gather his bearings.
Are you all alright? We got the call from the signalman that you were lost, so we sent out a search party. Thank goodness we found you.
Yes, we're alright. It wasn't Oliver's fault. The signalman dozed off, so we got sent down the wrong line by mistake,
Oliver's driver replied, defending him, but Topham lifted his hand, signaling him to stop.
I know. I'm just glad that we found you and you're all safe. That's what matters. But
Oh. Sir Topham Hatt stopped, noticing the abandoned, huge building standing past the station and by the tracks. He then walked towards them to investigate. He wandered around the area, inspecting the old manor and estate. He put his arms behind his back and stood in front of them, lost in thought. Oliver continued to breathe heavily, still trying to calm himself and process what had happened. Sir Topham then returned to Oliver, looking pleased.
Oliver, you've just found another attraction for our island. It's an old manor that belonged to a wealthy family here on the island, but it's been abandoned for many years. We'll make this house as good as new, and visitors can have tea and dinner here. You and the other engines can bring them here. You can even have a nice run away from the Little Western from time to time. Won't that be nice?
Oliver tried to manage a small smile, but he was still lost in thought, and Topham noticed.
Is everything all right, Oliver?
Yes, sir. No. Actually, no, I don't think it is.
Oliver is now a different engine. He is still popular with the others and works hard, but his demeanor has changed. He's sent to become a quieter, more soft-spoken engine, and keeps to himself most of the time. The others aren't sure why. Oliver did not tell anyone about that night's events, not even Duck or Toad. From then on, Oliver has become a more cautious, more thoughtful, and grateful engine. But to this day, Oliver can't shake the feeling that he is, in fact, still being watched.